What do you say when a student just won't listen? Not what it says in a textbook. Not what you do when you have one student sitting across from you in a quiet room, but when you have 30 students, one running around the classroom, the other one trying to argue with you while you're trying to teach, and nobody's coming to save you. A teacher recently asked me that question, and that challenge was fair because teachers are often told, identify the function of behavior, use reinforcement, make a connection. But how do I actually do that is what I get. So today, we're here to go over some real classroom situations, the actual words that you can use, and most importantly, how to tell the difference of when to use one over the other. So before we start, I need you to understand one thing. There are no magic words or phrases. So if somebody comes to you and tells you, oh, here, use this. It works for every student. Hey, say this. It works for every situation. Hey, all you have to do is this. It works for every behavior. You need to be careful because two people can do the exact same behavior for two very different reasons. One student might get up out of their seat because the work is too hard. Another student might get out of their seat because every time they do that, 3 or 4 other students start laughing. And yet another student might get out of their seat because they literally cannot sit still and they have to get up and get some movement. Now that was 3 different students, 3 very different reasons of why they engaged in that particular behavior. So before you start asking, how do I stop this behavior? I want you to start asking, what is this behavior accomplishing? So let's start with the example that inspired this video. You teaching. A student gets up out of their seat. You tell them to sit down. They sit down for a minute, and then they get right back up. You say, hey, sit back down. They sit down, but when you leave, they getting up again. So they get up and they walk around the room, and this goes back and forth for a few times until everybody in the classroom is frustrated. So, what if that child was getting up because they were trying to escape the task? So this is something that I might do. I might go into them and say, remember, you only got 5 more problems, okay? Let's do the first 2 together, and then you can take a break, and then you can come back and do the rest. Notice what I didn't do. I didn't say, oh, you having a tough time with this? You don't have to do this. Don't even worry about it. I still have the same behavioral expectation that he will complete it, but I am giving him a different way to contact the reinforcement, a different way to escape. So you start off, and then you can take a little break, but we still are going to finish this page. So I'm communicating boundaries, but I'm also communicating, I understand what you're going through, and I will help you to get where you need to be. Now let's contrast this with constantly sending them out of the room. So they get up. Hey, you get up again. You go into the office. They sit back down. And of course, they getting up again. So they get back up. Okay, that's enough. Go to the office. If they were trying to escape the task in the first place, they just got what they wanted. Because think about it. During videos, they were fine. During another task, like art, they were just okay. During PE activities inside the classroom, oh, they had a blast. They did everything you asked them to do. But as soon as it was time to do one of those subjects that was difficult, all of a sudden they're walking around the room. So identify why that behavior is happening, and then you can go ahead and meet that need and still hold the same behavioral expectation, but also giving them a way out. So here's the second version of that same behavior. But this time, the student is not trying to escape a difficult task. So they stand up, you tell them to sit down. They stand back up, and 3 or 4 students start to laugh. You tell them to sit down, they sit back down and get right back up, of course. And then this time you say, hey, didn't I tell you to sit down? If you keep standing up, I'm going to send you out of this classroom right now. Now you have given them a ton of attention. Their peers are laughing. Everybody's looking at you now because you're screaming. All of this attention is going right towards this particular student. So what would you do in this situation? Here's how I would handle it. Since it seems like attention is maintained in this behavior, as soon as that student stands up and starts to walk around the room, I wouldn't give him my full attention. I might not even look at them. I might walk to where they need to be and just tap on their desk. Okay, I haven't said anything to them at all. That might get them to sit down. Okay, let's say they do sit back down, and let's say they start to engage in their work. Now I give them a little bit more. Oh, good. I see you started going right here. Oh, you knocked out number 1 and 2. Okay, cool. We'll keep going. So now I'm giving him attention for doing what he's supposed to do. And you have to think to yourself, well, if I'm giving them 4 and 5 minutes of my attention for their problematic behavior, but when they do something good, I do absolutely nothing, I'm sort of causing an imbalance when it comes to the attention. So you want to make sure to reinforce them with the attention when they're doing something they're supposed to. Even if they walk by the desk. Oh, look at you getting closer to your desk. That's exactly where I need you to be. If they're a student who doesn't do that often, then just closer proximity to the desk it needs to get reinforced. Let's say they actually sit down and start doing the work. That gets more reinforcement. You might sit down next to them and actually help them do 1 or 2 problems. And then you can go and get up and start walking around the classroom again. So once again, this is not an escape maintained behavior. This is an attention maintained behavior. So they keep getting up because they get attention, but you're going to flip the script and you're going to give them attention when they're doing what they're supposed to do. Now let's switch it up one more time. Let's say this next student is getting up out of their seat because they actually need that movement. So this student gets up, you tell them to sit down. They sit down, but then of course they can't help it. Within 5 seconds, they're right back up. You tell them to sit down again. They sit down. Matter of fact, they don't do a half sit down. They sit on their knee, one knee, with one leg on the floor, and then they get right back up. And you say, goodness, is something wrong with you? You must need to sit down. You can't just keep walking around the classroom, and it just goes on and on and on. Now you're berating somebody for something that they can't even control. So this is how you can switch that up. Now, if it is because of movement, what you can do to stay ahead of the game is schedule that movement into their daily schedule as opposed to fighting against something that they need to do anyway. So it's not that you just say, fine, that student can walk around whenever they want to, but you're going to schedule in those appropriate movement breaks. So before a difficult task, you may schedule some type of movement break. Let's say they just completed a task. You may say, oh, what? This is excellent. How about you take these documents up to the office for me? Maybe give them a job to where they are the pass monitor, the homework monitor, the paper collector, the trash picker-upper. Find something that they can do to get that movement out and let them take some pride and ownership over that particular job. So now it's not just, hey, you know what, they need to walk around, just let them do whatever they want to do. It is structured. You're working with them, and you're also helping them to build a skill that they did not have before. Now let's make this a little bit more difficult. Now you're teaching teenagers. And when you start, you give the direction. And somebody says, I'm not doing this. This is stupid. And you say, oh, yes, you are. And they say, oh, no, I'm not. And you say, excuse me? And they say, you heard me. And then your nervous system is talking to you. Uh-oh. This can escalate very quickly. Everybody's looking. It's not about the assignment anymore. It's about power, control, and about who's going to win. Publicly, you're making it harder and harder for that student to back down because, once again, when you get into a situation where it's an adult against a child, the younger person always wins because they have less to lose and they will go through the lowest depths to get perceivably what they want. So you have to be very careful. In this situation, I might say something like this. Okay, go ahead and start your assignment. I'm not doing this. This is stupid. Okay, I understand. This might be hard or you might be a little bit frustrated right now. But what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a second and I'll come back in a minute to check on you. You still kept that same expectation. You didn't draw yourself into a back and forth public display or debate. And you're going to come back in a second when it's safe to do so and check on that particular student. So that's how you can diffuse the situation, keep the expectation and boundary without getting into a full confrontation in front of everybody. So that is just one thing that you can do. What if the issue is how they're speaking to you? So a lot of people have an issue with disrespect. And disrespect can be different for different people, different cultures, different families. But let's say they said something that you found disrespectful. This is how I would approach that one. So, you know what? We're going to go and turn to page 25 right now. I'm not doing that. This is stupid. And your page is stupid just like you. This is how I would respond. You know what? I understand. This might be frustrating for you and you might be going through something. But what you're not allowed to do is call me stupid. But I will be with you in just a second. And then you continue teaching. So once again, you addressed what they're feeling or what they're expressing. You rephrased it even. You said, hey, I see that you're frustrated. Then you let them know the boundary. You are not allowed to say, and then be specific. Whatever it is that they said, if they called you stupid, you're not allowed to call me stupid. Don't just say something vague like you're not allowed to speak to me that way, because what is that way? Be as specific as you can. You're not allowed to call me stupid. And then you tell them how you're going to follow up with them. I'll be there in a second. So you just go ahead and continue, or you just take a little break, and I'll be over there in just a second. Once again, you keep that same expectation without breaking it, and you're giving them a way out. So once again, it doesn't have to end in an all-out blow-up battle, but you do have to address it. You have to do it in a way that meets their needs, that lets them know that you heard them, but also sets those boundaries. And this is where people say, okay, Ken, that all sounds good, but what about my 29 other students who's sitting there looking at me? And my answer is, you are absolutely correct. You have 29 other students. You cannot stop for 10 minutes and deal with this problem behavior every single time it happens, 15 times a day. It takes too much time. You're missing a lot of instruction, and you will burn out inevitably. So here's what you do. I've developed a model after having that comment. A, B, C, D. Okay, remember that. Acknowledge, boundary, choice, double back. Okay, I'm going to show you how that works. Acknowledge. So you might say something like, I see that you're upset. Okay, you've acknowledged them. You set the boundary. But you're not allowed to yell across the room. Okay, then you give them a choice. You can go ahead and start on number 1, or you can go ahead and go and get your other book and start reading in that one until I can come to you. Okay, and then double back, where is when you come back to the student. Hey, how are things going? I saw you were a little frustrated earlier. Were you able to get started? So that eliminates the back and forth. That gives you time. It gives you the exact words to say. And it also lets you know what to do with your other 29 children at that particular time. So you can deal with that child and you can talk to them, but you don't want to keep it long. You want to keep it brief, and you want to stick to the script. So you always want to acknowledge them. You always want to give them a boundary that they cannot cross and that you will not tolerate. You want to give them a choice though. So give them a way to save face and make a good choice. And then you want to double back, check back with them. So acknowledge, boundary, choice, double back, ABCD. Very, very simple. If you can remember and implement that, that will significantly reduce the amount of back and forth that you have in your class every year. So I know somebody else is thinking, so there's just no more consequences, huh? And I'm thinking this because a few of the comments have given me that idea. A few people have said almost that exact same thing, such as, if we brought consequences back, the children would act right. If all parents had to go to jail if they disrespected the teacher, we'd have no more behavior problems. So the issue is not consequences. You should actually have expectations, boundaries, and consequences. But consequences are part of the plan, not the entire plan. Another thing, a consequence can be a reinforcing consequence, which means it builds future behavior, or it can be a punishing consequence, which means it reduces future behavior. So you can give a consequence that actually increases or builds a skill. So that can be a consequence just as much as one that decreases a skill. So ask yourself, you've been given the same consequence to the same person for the entire school year. It didn't change a thing. So that right there should tell you that the consequence alone is not going to change the behavior. You have to set up expectations. You have to hold those boundaries, and then you have to deliver those consequences, whether they be punishment or reinforcement. So this is also a time where we have to let you know that we also need this positive reinforcement to keep coming back and making information that you can actually use. So go ahead right now, hit that subscription, hit that like, and make sure you share this with somebody else who could use it, because this information doesn't come by, a dime a dozen. A lot of times you have to look for it, you have to pay for it, but here we're giving it to you like we always give it to you. Professional, scientific, and raw. So if you like it like that, make sure you provide us with our consequence, which is that positive reinforcement. Hit that subscription bell and make sure that you share it. And there's another important piece to this. If you find yourself doing this every day for 15 minutes a day with the same student or the same behavior, at some point you have to ask yourself, is this worth it? Am I going to burn myself out over this one particular behavior? This may not be going the way that I expected it to go. Maybe I need some help. And at that point, you have to get your team involved, because you may be dealing with an issue that is even out of the student's control. A lot of our students have various conditions that have them acting in a way that is not typical of our student population, of our general student population. So you have to understand when they may be showing signs of that and getting the appropriate support. So there is no YouTube clip that's going to give you the right amount of information or the right phrase to just all of a sudden deal with that, because your job is not to just get better at surviving these types of behavior problems. It's not only to understand how to respond to it, but also to recognize when you need more help and support. So at that point, get your team involved. Counselors, administrators, psychologists, whoever. And then, as always, document, document, document. If I could make one wish, every time I walked into a teacher's classroom and they told me about a behavior problem, it would be that they started some type of data collection system. Anything, checks on the wall, checks on the paper, collecting paper clips, permanent products. Oh, this is what they did yesterday. Oh, this is what they did today. Some way that we can keep data. Because the first thing somebody who comes from the outside is going to do is ask you what the problem is exactly and how often it occurs. You can solve a lot of problems and you can make your help go a lot faster if you have some answer to those questions. You don't have to have a full plan laid out and a nice chart to present to them, but if you have something that will help your case in the long run. So keep that in mind as you continue to progress towards the school year. So let me leave you with some language. You're going to have the problem happen again. And when it does, here's some things you might be able to say. Instead of saying, sit down, you might say, we're working on a few problems right now. Make sure you get started on these first two so we can get to the next ones. Instead of saying, stop talking to me that way, you might say, hey, I see that you're frustrated, but you're not allowed to call me a meathead. I'm going to check back with you in a few minutes. Instead of saying, sit back down in your seat. You keep getting up. Every time you get up, I'm going to take a mark, and if I get too many, I'm going to call home. You say, oh, you know what? It seems like you have some trouble sitting in that seat. As a matter of fact, would it help if we scheduled in a little movement break so you can get your wiggles out before we get to this next assignment? So now, you have some things to say instead of things that escalate or cause more behavior problems in the classroom. So in this situation, you don't have a magic pill. You don't have a silver bullet. So you have to continue to use a plan. If you have one, stick to it. Make sure you stick to the script. But at least now you have some phrases, some words to use when you come across these situations and you don't know what to do. This should at least get you through those situations. And I want to do something a little bit different with this series. This video exists because of a teacher who came in the comments and asked a really great question. So I want to keep that going. If you can think about something that happens in your classroom and you say, well, what do I do when? I want you to finish that sentence down there in the comments, and we might turn that one into a video. So you might be thinking, what do I do when my student runs out of the classroom? What do I do when my student starts taking off all their clothes in the classroom? And then we can give you some ideas of what to do when those exact things happen. Not just textbook, not just what might happen in a one-on-one discrete trial situation. What happens when you have 30 other students in your classroom, and maybe even a visitor, and maybe even a parent doing a parent observation? How do you respond? Keep yourself cool, stay professional, and still be ready and upbeat for the rest of the day and the rest of your children. So I want you to make sure you hit those "what do you do when" down in the comments. And like I said, we might turn that one into our next video. So if you like this information, it's been valuable to you, it's been somewhat entertaining, make sure you hit that subscription bell, that thumbs up, like it, and then share it with somebody else who you know can use this information. And if you want to continue to support us and you want to continue this information to keep coming directly to you, you really don't have to do anything but this one thing that we always ask of you, and that is to stay tuned.